So just to start off, our presenters today, Renus Sridham, VP Solutions Consulting and Alliances at Tradeshifts. Renus is responsible for the company's global solutions consulting team and commercial alliances. Renus brings 15 years of experience in B2B supply management through using, deploying, and marketing enterprise solutions. He's a frequent speaker, frequent writer in this industry and space. Prior to joining Tradeshifts, his roles included Chief Marketing Officer at Habu, VP of Alliances at Ariba, and Global Evangelist at SAP. So thank you, Renus, for joining. We also have Henry Imes from PayStream. Henry is the Managing Director of PayStream, and many of you may already know Henry. He is a former banker, payments technology entrepreneur. He's well known in the financial automation and payments industry, frequent speaker at conferences. Henry brings 20 years of experience from key positions that he held within Citibank, E&Y, and many of you know he has developed a leading position in this technology space and financial industry through his research, through articles, through his thought leadership activities in this space. So thank you very much, Henry, for joining. I will now hand it over to Renus and Henry.
Great, thank you, Vishal, and Henry, thank you for joining us. Why don't we start off with a little bit of a discussion around e-invoicing and the fee aspect. So Henry, what are your overall views in the market today about supplier fees?
Wow, digging right in. I think it's more important to talk about the value of electronic invoicing and how the market, just as a background of, we saw a huge growth early on in the internet boom in electronic invoicing, and Renus, you've been here for a long time, primarily against large companies, large payers saying to their suppliers, come in and join. And because IBM and Walmart and ExxonMobil and other giant companies have power over their suppliers, they could say, join my network. Then along the way, there was some introduction of supplier fees to pay for the networks because the solution providers needed to find a revenue source to continue to be able to do onboarding of new suppliers, to bring in, to support the teams that it took to recruit the suppliers and integrate them to the platforms. So we've seen kind of a market, and we're going to call it a two-tier or bifurcated market. On the upper end, the large companies are charging, in many cases, the suppliers some type of fee to participate in the network and provide invoices, in some cases based on the dollar amount of the invoice. And we think that that was and is very appropriate for high-value vendors who are doing lots of business. The cost of the supplier fees is a rounding error in the overall cost of the relationship. If you're doing, you know, millions or even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, it's a transaction cost, much like an EDI van fee to participate in the network. And now there's been lately more talk as we move down tier to the smaller suppliers. How do we bring them in, smaller and medium size? And our supplier fee is going to have some impact to that, and I think that's what we should focus our effort on today.
Yeah, so on that trail of thought, do you see fees hindering supplier adoption, especially when it gets to those medium and long tail suppliers?
Right, so when we talk about the long tail, we're talking about smaller suppliers that might only be doing handfuls of invoices in a year, and the medium size, when we think of suppliers that might be doing 3 to 5 invoices a month, but of smaller value. I don't think that we can say it's harming adoption yet. The reason for that is that we don't really have ubiquitous use of electronic invoicing amongst even the largest of enterprises. So Fortune 500 adoption of electronic invoicing is in the 60% range if we think about EDI, but not 100%, right, Renus? We've been doing this for, well, nearly 13 years, and we're still nowhere close. So I don't know if we could say that the cost is the impediment. I think the bigger impediments, I think cost is one factor, but certainly access to the long tail and connectivity to the long tail is one of the themes. The other reason I don't think it's a big issue yet is because we only have a handful of companies that are charging fees. So if we think about the GXSs of the world and IBM's Sterling Commerce, they're charging fees. They're supplier value-added networks, as is GHX, a global healthcare exchange in the healthcare industry. And then when we look at Ariba and OB10, well, they're charging supplier fees, but their supplier communities are fairly small in the scheme of things. U.S. supplier bases, each of them having around anywhere from 3 to 700,000 suppliers, but not all of those suppliers are integrated, and many of them are just providing supply invoices off the web. So it's hard to tell. Our data doesn't tell us that. We don't have enough data that says from suppliers, I'm not going to sign up because it's costing me money. We hear anecdotes about that, but there's no data in the market that gives us hard answers to the question.
Henry, thank you for that insight. And yeah, it really is amazing, isn't it, that here we are in 2014 and we still have such a small sample size of the percent of suppliers that are actually invoicing electronically. So why don't we go ahead and move on to the next phase of the presentation here. What we have as a section here is talking about why do supplier fees exist. Henry had talked a little bit about the types of models of the past. EDI vans had always charged both sides of the equation, both the buyer and the seller. Today, as we move into the world of supplier networks and business networks that have been around for the last 10 or so years, you have seen different business models that have come across. And if we're looking at the buyer's perspective now, Tradeshifts' opinion on why supplier fees exist is because it's been fabricated by the technology provider industry. It was a reason and a vehicle to reduce the entry point for the buyer. So if the logic is that if you are able to reduce the price or the subscription or the license to the buyer and pass some of those costs on to the supplier, that can make it easier to adopt new buyers. What we've seen in our own experience is that fees are a commercial layer of friction. So it's a means of having to get a supplier's legal and commercial teams on board to sign up for a fee-based arrangement before they can become onboarded for electronic invoicing. And also, frankly, when you look at this technology landscape industry, Wall Street has always valued higher what's called network revenue. And one example of network revenue is those fees that are collected from a large number of businesses like suppliers on a network. So there has been success in our industry for companies with acquisitions and IPOs based on this network revenue model. If you look at this from the other side, from the supplier side, if they have to pay fees, is that just part of the cost of doing business? Henry mentioned maybe for the large volume suppliers, it is a rounding error. They're used to it from the EDI van fees of the past. But for many of the small suppliers, what we find is that they do pass those fees back to the buyer because they simply can't bear the burden, especially when it's a percent of spend type fee. In our opinion, fees would be fine if they don't discriminate against those low volume, high value invoices. I'll give you an example from my last job. We were a supplier of a very large Fortune 500 company that happened to use one of these business networks in the industry. And it was one of these business networks that charged a 15.5 basis point fee, which is a percent of spend fee. So what we had to do was actually pay about $9,000 US to send one invoice. It was a model where we would send one very large invoice per year, and under that business network provider's commercial model, we had to pay 15.5 basis points. So I could have actually paid to have somebody fly first class cross country and hand key that invoice into the customer's ERP system for cheaper than what the fee was on that one invoice. Fees would also be fine if they were cost-based. If they were standard and low fee per invoice. There's a very minimal IT cost that network providers have to be able to process every transaction. So sure, if there's a little margin on top of that IT cost, that's justifiable. And also, they would be fine if there are no free e-invoicing options, but there most definitely are in today's world. Fundamentally, our firm's opinion is that when you tie a fee to the value of the invoice, so you call it a tax, that does not add business value. So here's a research study from Paystream, from Henry's organization, talking about barriers to e-invoicing. So when you look at this here, there's quite a few, actually all four here are related to the suppliers. So there's the cost for the supplier to participate, there's getting suppliers to integrate, if they already have an electronic accounts receivable system, it's offering those suppliers easy to use tools without all the training that's associated with enterprise rollouts. And then there's also, how do you communicate the benefits to suppliers? Is it summits? Is it webinars? Is it help desks? A lot of burden to getting suppliers involved. So the net here is to get successful participation and grow that volume we talked about in the e-invoicing. You really do need suppliers to be engaged. Here's another study from Arden Partners talking about key factors that accounts payable organizations are looking at today when they do select a supplier network or a business network. They look at number of suppliers. They also look at those transaction costs. It's been well publicized in the market today that these costs do come back to bite because they are passed back from the supplier to the customer. So companies are is of that equation. We've been all hearing this for many decades now, right? That suppliers aren't just a supplier-customer relationship; they are partners. In some cases, suppliers can be even more valuable than employees because they see a cross-industry view of the market. They may see how other of their customers are doing things differently or better. They can provide ideas on their products that may be a better fit. There's lots of collaboration means where suppliers can add value to your business as opposed to just being a vendor as they were called in the past. So partnership view and collaborating with suppliers is what we believe is key. This picture here represents that we're in the same boat as our suppliers, right? It's a delicate balance. Any disturbance in that supply chain can have some pretty damaging impacts. And what is that impact if we talk just about supplier fees? Now, here's an example. This happens to be one of our competitors that charges 15.5 basis points based on spend. They have some minimum thresholds and some caps, but this is an actual calculation. If a global apparel company had 312,000 invoices per year, just under 3,000 suppliers, and spent $2.1 billion, then the total cost to that apparel company's suppliers would be $3.2 million per year under that competitor's supplier fee model. Now, if even a fraction of that gets passed back to you as a buyer, that adds up. That's pretty tangible. Here's an even bigger example. This is a global logistics company with almost 1 million annual invoices, 29,000 suppliers, and $6 billion in spend. Look at this. We're over 8 million in annual fees to the supply chain. So, I would bet that at least a fraction of that gets passed back in cost of goods and services. So in Tradeshifts' view, there's most definitely a better model out there in the industry. Our position in the market is that it should be a balanced approach between you and your partner, the suppliers. So if we take a look at the left of the screen here, so for suppliers on the Tradeshift model, it's always free. There's no fees no matter what. We see also that ease of use and the ability to connect anyway is very important for getting these suppliers on board electronically. We mentioned at the beginning, getting that participation is really at the end of the day what it's about. The commercial barriers are one, but also the technical barriers and the ease of use barriers. So what we at Tradeshift do is we allow suppliers any way they want to come onto the platform. They can log on through a web portal, which is, by the way, a many-to-many portal. They log on the same place for many customers. Also, suppliers can integrate with whatever accounting system, whatever AR system they may be using today. We've got pre-built connectors with popular AR systems like QuickBooks, like Sage, Oracle, SAP. To talk a little bit more about the QuickBooks example, they happen to be the largest single AR system on the planet. There's over 5 million companies that use QuickBooks for their accounts receivable. In the next version of QuickBooks, there's going to be a third option for how those businesses can send invoices. Today, they can print an invoice, they can send a PDF by email. The third option now is going to be submit the invoice to Tradeshift. So an inherent integration to the Tradeshift network from QuickBooks. But it's not just for sending invoices, it's also directly from within QuickBooks. Those suppliers can see the status of invoices. Have they been approved? They can see payment status, or remittance advice. When is that invoice going to be paid? All within the way they're doing business today. So it's an example of working and being non-invasive and having that ease of use. And on the right-hand side, same thing, collaboration from the buyer's perspective. You want to be able to communicate and collaborate both structured, which is transactions, and unstructured data with your suppliers. So all of the back and forth, eliminate the voicemails, the emails, the dispute management, and keep a trail of all the communication directly online. What we also believe is getting rid of the big stick approach to doing supplier onboarding. Traditional business networks have used the means saying that if you're a large buyer, you should tell your suppliers that they have to do business this way if they still want to be a supplier. And by the way, they have to pay a fee. Suppliers will scream, they'll moan, they'll do anything they can to get around that system. We believe, like we mentioned, taking the commercial friction away, taking the ease of use and integration friction away, but also there's always going to be paper. We define paper as being emailed PDFs or Word documents, as well as paper that comes through the old-fashioned mail. So when you take a look here, this chart here represents a continuum of the different size of suppliers. So you see large suppliers, which is you're going to have fewer of them but higher number of invoices. You can have medium-sized suppliers, and then they'll have your long tail or small suppliers. Many more suppliers but fewer invoices. So for the medium and small ones, initially you're going to get still quite a bit of PDFs by email and paper. But what you also see here is the light green shows supplier validated. For example, when suppliers send you PDFs through the Tradeshift platform, Tradeshift will immediately send an email back to the supplier that says, Mr. Supplier, can you please validate the electronic version of that PDF? So it takes the burden away from the AP department, but it also then encourages the supplier to become electronic. The supplier will get a note after they validated their PDF. It'll say, by the way, next time you can submit the invoice electronically to begin with and skip this validation step. We find that about half of those suppliers that send in PDFs over every 6-month period, half of them convert to electronic. So when you see this graph move here, over time, you're going to get large and medium suppliers all directly submitting electronic invoices and really minimize the number that still present paper on the long tail. So summarizing here, what are some of the keys to supplier participation we've talked about? It is value. So value is not only taking away the big stick and taking away the fees, but it's also adding additional value, making it better for the supplier. We'll give one example in a moment. It's the ease of use, and it's multi-way onboarding. Not just the big stick, but also the carrots, like the scanning-based paradigm we just talked about. For us, ease of use, the example here is a supplier using a mobile phone to go ahead and present invoices. So suppliers, buyers, your AP staff, everybody's used to using LinkedIn and Facebook and other consumer-friendly applications on their phone. But yet when we ask them to come to work, we ask folks to use screens like the one in the background. Very complex, lots of fields. Tradeshift fundamentally believes you should be able to use any device and finger touch controls. We also believe that just like a phone, you should be able to add apps or add business processes as you need them, whether it's scanning, workflow, electronic invoicing. Build your own app, add supplier validation. Tradeshift is building a community of B2B functionality. It's not just ours, but it's from the ecosystem of the global B2B community, building apps, adding apps to the platform that you can deploy. Finally, we talked about eliminating the big stick, adding the carrot. What is the biggest carrot for suppliers and why they would want to join an electronic network? It's getting paid on time and even early in some cases. So supply chain financing has been around for a while, but it's traditionally been targeted just at the larger suppliers. It's traditionally been focused on the buyer's credit as being used in offering that finance rate to the supplier. On Tradeshift's platform, we allow multiple financing vehicles to plug into the platform. So you can offer your entire supply chain that early payment opportunity. An example is we've got partnerships with firms that offer long-tail suppliers an instant credit rate, instant finance rate, but it's based on who the buyer is, what the invoice is, the history of that type of invoice being paid, the supplier's credit rating, all of that information, all available real time, and then the result is the supplier gets a fraction of a rate of what traditional factoring would have cost them to take their money early. And then there's also dynamic discounting, which is you, the buyer yourself, taking some of your cash and maximizing that and making it work for you to go ahead and offer early pay programs to your suppliers. Why don't we go ahead and wrap with that and see if there's any questions out there.
Great. Thank you, guys. Rinus, Henry. We do have a couple of questions from the attendees. I'll just start off with asking Henry one question. I believe this was directed at you. Can you share any insights into how companies have been able to successfully overcome onboarding challenges? Henry?
Thanks for that, Michelle. Well, basically setting up systems that work for their suppliers. Clearly, Rinus is showing us some models where the system was good for a larger supplier, but not for the small. So it has to be a good value for all the community, and well, they're very different. A large supplier has different needs from a small supplier. We think, before Tradeshift, trying to solve it for both large and small and medium, all in between, there really wasn't solutions. The other solutions really didn't care about connecting to the smaller suppliers. So companies had to go to more than one solution. So we've seen in the last couple of years niche solutions come up out of the market to solve the problem. But this idea of a one platform where the collaboration can be done for all suppliers, all comers, that's a new concept. And well, the jury's still out whether it's going to really work. The open platform is an awesome concept, and we're very excited to see what happens, see it grow. But I would say most of our customers have not really successfully attacked both sides yet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Henry. Rinus, I believe this one's for you. Can you provide an example where Tradeshift has undergone a successful onboarding campaign or initiative?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and give an example of one of our customers, Nike, a global apparel company. I think you all know them, based out of Portland, Oregon. So Nike recently switched from one of the competing business networks out there. It was one of the networks that charged 15.5 basis points on spend. So over 5 years of using that previous technology, Nike was able to onboard 450 suppliers. In the first 3 months on the Tradeshift platform, they've already onboarded more than that 450. So, and it's because of all these factors we talked about, the, no commercial barriers, the come any way you are as a supplier to become onboarded, and the ease of use. So that's over a 12 times faster clip on onboarding than they were doing the previous 5 years. So we're very proud of that.
Great. Thank you very much. There's just one more question, I believe, from the audience, and I think this is for Tradeshift. What are the pros and cons of Tradeshift versus Ariba versus Talia or OB10?
I'd say to cover what are the main differences. It's the different tenants we discussed during the presentation. It is the commercial model, right? So taking away that commercial friction on suppliers. A second main difference is the usability. So you take a look at Tradeshift applications all being designed with responsive design, meaning that you can use it on tablets, mobile phones, laptops, with your finger, regardless of where you are. So that no training, you just walk up and use it model. And then the different means of supplier onboarding, right? Not just using one big stick approach to drive suppliers on. It's using the carrot and lots of other innovative ways like the scanning leading to onboarding of a supplier that we talked about.
Okay, just one last question. I think Renus, you'll be able to answer this pretty quickly. Are your fees value or volume driven?
So Tradeshift's fees are 100% buyer focused. We charge a subscription to the buyer, so very transparent. No costs being passed back from suppliers, and those fees to the buyer are a flat fee per business process. So we don't charge by volume. We want our customers to maximize the use of the platform and go all out and get 100% of their spend on. So again, it's a flat fee subscription based on business process.
Okay, great. I think we are at the end of the presentation. Thank you everybody for your thoughts and insights. That was great. Attendees, you will get the presentation right after this. You'll have a copy of it. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow up after as well. Also, if you do want to hear more about onboarding and how we handle it at Tradeshift, we do have another webinar scheduled, and it's coming up. You can see on our website in the resources section. It'll share five key strategies for successful onboarding of suppliers. So thank you everybody, and have a good day.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.